Hello YouTube, Bromopar here. I stumbled across this video on YouTube. It was by a fellow called Rupert Sheldrake, and I guess he has a book. He mentioned it called the Science Delusion, and he did a talk at Tedx. Now, I'm not really a fan of Tedx. I don't really know a whole lot about it. I never bothered to research it, but for some reason this video kind of popped up in my feed, and I think it was because it featured what he called the 10 Dogmas of Science. Now, right off the bat, this title struck a chord with me, and anyone who loves science as much as I do, you automatically know why. But for the rest of you, I want to point out that science has no dogmas. Dogma is really, it's a religious term. It's I don't know the exact definition, but the way I've had it described to me, it's basically a rule based on faith. Anyone who's been watching my videos knows exactly how I feel about faith. So if trying to equate science and faith, I knew right off the bat this video was probably not for me. But I watched it anyway, and the result is this video that you're watching now. Now, Rupert talked about the 10 dogmas. Well, he mentioned them. He only talked about a few of them. I only got through the part where he described all 10 of them. And he didn't want to talk about all of them, but I'm going to go ahead and try and talk about all of them. So I'm not going to bury the lead. I'm just going to go ahead and get started. This is my response to Rupert Sheldrake's 10 Dogmas of Science. And we're going to go down. Admit I'm kind of sort of paraphrasing here, mostly for the extent of time. The video was actually quite long. The description of the 10 dogmas itself took up almost all of it. So here we are. Quote-unquote Dogma 1. Nature is mechanical or machine-like. The universe is like a machine. Animals and plants are like machines. We are like machines. In fact, we are machines. Now, Rupert has kind of taken the definition of machine here, I think, a little too literally. In pretty much every example where I have talked to people, biology, my biology teachers in high school, my brief stint in college, they're adamant that, yes, you can call the body a machine, but it is not a machine in the classical definition that we are aware of. It is not designed, it is not built, it is not assembled. It really is not a machine in a way that we would equate that to. So for science to call the body a machine is really just an attempt to try and help you understand how the body works by giving you an analogy, by comparing the body to something that is known, something that you do understand. So by using that as your foundation, but you start with that, okay, the body is a machine, and then you can kind of learn, you can build off of that. And once you understand how the body really does work, the idea that it's a machine really just kind of fades into the background, just sort of disappears. It never really goes away, I guess, for some people. He quotes Richard Dawkins. I don't know if I have the quote here or not. I'm reading from my notes in case you're wondering why I'm looking down. Okay, apparently I didn't write it down, but he quotes Richard Dawkins as saying, that we were basically machines. We're meat machines, I guess was the quote, and that's really not accurate. But to be honest, when you're trying to learn biology, you're trying to learn how the human body works. That is really the best way to start about it. That doesn't mean that the human body is a machine. It doesn't mean that nature is a machine. It doesn't mean that plants are machines. It just gives you something to work with, a foundation to build off of, so that you can understand how these things work, how they live, how they absorb energy, how they digest food into nutrients, all these other things. And you can use analogies like machines to help you understand that. It's not a dogma at all. It's not a rule. There's no, if you're not comfortable thinking of the human body as a machine, no scientist is going to stop you from trying to come up with your own analogy that's going to work. As long as you understand the human body and how it works, you're good. I mean, that's really all there is to it. Dogma 2, matter is unconscious. The whole universe is made up of unconscious matter. There is no consciousness in stars and galaxies and planets and plants and animals, and there ought not be in any of us either. A lot of science over the last 100 years has been trying to prove that we're not really conscious at all. I don't even know where to begin. If anybody listens to Star Talk Radio, there was recently a 3-part episode. They did a live show at BAM, which suddenly I'm blanking on what that stands for, but I think it was an Auditorium of Music. If anybody remembers, please, by all means, correct me. I honestly don't remember. But it was hosted by, of course, Dr. Neil deGrasse Tyson. Eugene Merman was there. A couple of very funny comedians. Mayim Bialik was, by the way, has a PhD in psychology or psychiatry. I'm screwing all this up. But there was also a neuroscientist there. And one of the questions that Neil asked her was, about consciousness. And the neuroscientist who was the special guest there explained that they don't really understand what consciousness is. Now, that is different from saying there is nothing that is conscious, not even us. So that's just a flat, I'm just going to call him on his bullshit. That's a lie. Rupert, you are fucking lying, okay? There is a whole field of study, scientific study, dedicated to consciousness, to trying to discover and understand consciousness. Now, as far as matter not having a consciousness, the only reason science says that is because our observance of matter and how matter works does not suggest that there is a consciousness behind it. From the quantum mechanical level all the way up to the most massive galactic filaments of our universe, there is nothing that astrophysicists have observed. There is nothing astrophysicists have observed that even remotely suggests that these things are being controlled by consciousness. Not the way, certainly not in the way that we would identify consciousness in ourselves or in living beings. See, here's the thing that Rupert is blatantly ignoring with this dogma, is why it really pisses me off. In fact, he's calling it a dogma, in fact. It's that scientists compare what is known to what is unknown. So you take an unknown, in this case, does matter have consciousness? And we'll just go ahead and call that an unknown. So how do we figure out that, what is the best way for science to figure out that matter has consciousness? Well, compare it to something that has consciousness. What has consciousness? Us. Animals, mammals, lizards, fish, insects. All of these things have consciousness that we've, from what we've observed. So we compare how they act to the formation and breakdown of matter all throughout our universe, and we find that the two act completely differently. The matter that we observe does not perform in the way that animals do. In order of their organization, they don't. Matter doesn't form societies. There's no such thing as a galactic society. I mean, the living things in it, but the plants and the asteroids are not forming governments. They're not forming tribes. The black holes aren't devouring stars because they feel superior some way. They feel like they're God. I mean, nothing in the way that we've observed matter suggests that it has consciousness, and therefore it allows us to suggest that, barring further evidence, we can assume that matter does not have consciousness. And that's how that works. It's not a dogma, it's a theory which is tested through experimentation and is accepted as fact, and I'll get back to that later. Dogma 3, the laws of nature are fixed. The laws of nature are the same now that they were at the Big Bang, and they'll be the same forever. Obviously, Rupert has never heard of the Planck time. Now, the Planck time is, I believe, 10 to the minus 27 seconds after the Big Bang. After the Big Bang. Now, this is a minuscule period of time, but it is still a period of time after the Big Bang. That is the point at which the laws of physics, that we know them, begin. Prior to that, the laws of physics as we know them simply do not work. So no, they're not fixed. they were not the same at the Big Bang as they are now. In fact, some scientists have even suggested that certain physical constants throughout our universe, as they've observed farther and farther out to the universe, they believe that certain physical constants have actually changed. Certain, you know, uh, patterns that we've observed as far as how matter forms and moves is a little bit different enough that when you plug in a different constant, boom, it explains it. I'm not sure how far they've gotten on that, but all of this completely flies in the face of this so-called dogma. It's not a dogma if it's willing to change. And that's the thing about science, as I just mentioned. Through testing, through observation, through experimentation, science continually tests and retests itself. It does not stop at theory. Just because you have a theory doesn't mean that's it, it's universal, boom, we're done. Scientists continually retest theory. I mean, relativity is a perfect example. Einstein, first wrote it down in 1917. We have been testing it ever since. We are continuing to test it. We will continue to test it long into the future, long past anybody watching this video lifespan. And that's how science works. Dogma 4. The total amount of matter and energy is always the same. It never changes in total quantity, except in the moment of the Big Bang, where all sprang into existence from nowhere in a single instant. We don't know where all the matter and energy that created our universe came from. Scientists will straight up tell you they don't know. There are several hypotheses. Many of them are extremely fascinating. One of my personal favorites is a hypothesis that suggests that after the Big Bang, because the laws of physics allowed matter and energy to travel faster than the speed of light, it would have gone back in time, and it could theoretically have gone back prior to the Big Bang, at which point the matter and energy simply would have been trapped in a sort of feedback loop, forever gaining energy until it finally exploded, creating the universe. So in other words, the universe created itself. The universe's effect preceded its cause. We don't know if that's true. It is a hypothesis. It is not a theory. I'll get back to that later. There are many others. That's only one. Yeah, I mean, as far as the total matter and energy being the same, one of the biggest questions that scientists ask, that Stephen Hawking has been trying to deal with very, very famously, very recently, is where does the matter that gets sucked into a black hole go? Now, I want to back up a little bit before we continue. The reason that is such a problem is because it is theorized that all the matter and energy in the universe cannot be created or destroyed. It can only change shape. So that's probably where he's getting this quote-unquote dogma from. However, he's forgetting something. He's forgetting a lot of things, not the least of which is the black hole. According to our understanding of black holes, and this may be changing very soon, in fact, I kind of hope it is, I'm really eager to see what it changes to, is that when matter goes into a black hole, it's gone forever. So that would actually suggest that the amount of matter in our universe is actually going down because black holes are constantly eating it. And once the black hole takes it in, it's gone. Another problem with this is what's called entropy. Now, entropy suggests that anytime matter is converted to energy and back again, a tiny amount of it will be lost. Okay? Keep in mind, the tiny amount of the matter that is converted to energy, or the energy is converted to matter, is lost. Okay? There's nothing in that law that suggests that all the matter and energy of the universe is forever fixed. The amount will never change, never go up, or never go down. In fact, it suggests that it will constantly taper off, and the process is irreversible. And in fact, if you ever watch, there's a really good video about the history of the universe as we get farther and farther on into the cosmological decades. There comes a point when all the matter in our universe simply breaks down, and the only thing left are black holes. Those burn out, and then what's left after that? Nothing. There's no matter. There's no energy. Or if there is energy, it's basically almost equivalent to the background of space-time itself. At which point, does our universe truly exist anymore? I mean, that's a pretty big question. If there's no matter, if there's no energy, is there a universe? So Once again, this is a blatant lie. I mean, there's no other way to call it. There's no nicer way to put it. This is a fucking lie. And Dogma 5, actually all of these, I think from here on out, pretty much fall into the same thing. Dogma 5, nature is purposeless. There is no purpose in nature, and the evolutionary process has no purpose or direction. This is not necessarily a dogma. Again, it's an observation. It is saying, basically, I hate to say challenge because it really isn't that either, but it is just a statement that if there's a purpose to the universe, we haven't found it. Nothing in evolution, nothing in the Big Bang, nothing in the theories and laws of physics, whatever you want to call them, suggests that there's any kind of purpose to any of it. Evolution is an ongoing process. Religious theists, particularly fundamentalists, the extremists, most vocally suggest that human beings are the pinnacle of evolution. But the problem is that evolution hasn't stopped. Who's to say there isn't going to be another species coming along later on that isn't better than us? Who's to say that it hasn't happened already on another planet somewhere else in our universe? Particularly if, as many conspiracy theorists claim, aliens have flown to this planet. Those aliens, evolutionarily, are superior to us in every single way. So you can pretty much forget the idea that human beings are the pinnacle of evolution. If there is a purpose, as religion suggests, and I'm assuming this is where Rupert Sheldrake is getting all of this bullshit, is from his religious beliefs, if whatever those may be, is that humans are the purpose. God, whoever, created life to create us, and we're the ultimate end-all, be-all of everything. And that's bullshit. Sorry, bullshit meter is totally going off. Dogma 6, and this ties into Dogma 5, the biological hereditary is material. Everything you inherit is in your genes, or in epigenetic modifications of the genes, or in cytoplasmic inheritance. It is all material. In this case, I think he's kind of throwing terms out. Epigenetic modifications and cytoplasmic inheritance. I actually had to look these things up. This dogma, quote unquote, was written under the theory that, well, if you can't dazzle them with brilliance, baffle them with bullshit. I don't think he's using these terms in the way that they're really meant. They're both forms of epigenetic modification and cytoplasmic inheritance are forms of gene passing from parent to child, whatever the species may be. They are relatively new fields of study. They're not totally understood yet, and it is an attempt to try and fill in the blanks of genetic, memory. I'm kind of blanking right now, but basically, this is not a dogma, because we are saying that everything in your physical body comes from your genes, because when we've observed the process through which you are conceived, through which your body gestates inside your mother, when you were born, as your body develops, everything we've observed about that process suggests that there is nothing more than biological processes at work. Your DNA multiplies, your cells multiply, your limbs are grown, everything is grown through this internal process that has no guidance whatsoever that we have been able to see or observe. So for him to even attempt to suggest that saying that the known universe, everything we know about the universe, can't be only material is foolish at best, because we have never seen any evidence to suggest otherwise. Will it ever come? At this point, I highly doubt it. Maybe someday in a far-flung future, someone will find something. But until they do, this can fuck off. Seriously. And it's just all there is to it. Dogma 7, Dogma 8, Dogma 9, Dogma 10. Memories are stored inside your brain, material trances. Your mind is all inside your head. Psychic phenomena are telepathy are possible. And mechanistic medicine We're really just going to combine all four of these because they're not separate. They're really kind of, the first three in particular are all the same. I'll get to the last one. That was kind of the same as the one I just talked about. But what Rupert is trying to suggest is that your mind is separate from your body in some way. Basically, what he's trying to say is that, science denies the existence of a soul. And the reason for that is that we have not found evidence that your soul exists separate from your biological body. So your memories can't be stored anywhere else but your head. There's nowhere else to store them. We haven't found any place that memories can be stored other than within the chemical reactions in the cells within your brain. Your mind functions as a result of the neurochemical processes that go through your mind. The speech that I'm giving you now is all a result of things that we have observed when we watch people speak through MRI machines, through through EKGs, through all these machines that we hook up to people's bodies to measure what's going on in their brain as they perform certain functions. All of the evidence that we have found suggests that all of it is internal. Psychic phenomena like telepathy, we've tried to figure out how these things can work, and without certain assistance, these things can't happen. In other words, psychic telepathy is impossible. Technological telepathy, on the other hand, that's a completely different story altogether. We have actually been able to use technology to let the mind control certain things without physical interaction. I just watched a video recently. The DECA company has created a prosthetic limb. And part of how the prosthetic limb works is by measuring your brain waves. So you just think open hand and the hand opens. You think close hand and the hand closes. You think move this, move that. You think all these things in your mind. Stroke patients have had subdermal chips implanted in their scalps. Using these chips, which they can communicate with computers, the stroke patient, which cannot communicate physically, like can't move their eyes, can now send email, can talk over over the internet to loved ones and family members simply by using their thoughts. That is telepathy, but it is aided by technology. Rupert doesn't really seem to give a shit about that, and that is telepathy granted by science. Will telekinesis eventually be granted by science? Who knows? 10 years ago, I would have told you you're full of shit. But now, I'll shrug my shoulders. If you tell me some point in the future someone's going to put something on top of my head that's going to allow me to control an object without having to be able to move an object, I should say, not control, because that's what we already discussed. But move an object just using my brain, all right, well, I'd love to see it, When it happens, I'll definitely be watching for it. And then mechanistic medicine is the only kind that really works outside of the placebo effect. Study after study, I don't know how many times we have to go over this. Homeopathy just doesn't fucking work. It is all bullshit. There's been study after study after study after study. Every time some new homeopathic remedy comes up, scientists jump all over it because they want to know if it can actually do what it says it does. And then when they take the claims and then they compare them to what actually happens, the results always fail. Always. I don't think it's failed yet. It's crazy how you can't say that this stuff doesn't work when you've got study after study after study, a mountain of paperwork that says it does not work. You're just living in denial if you think that. So basically, the bottom line I want to get down to here is that Rupert Sheldrake is really writing these dogmas not based on what science actually is, but really a public perception of science, particularly the perception that comes from conspiracy theorists, from creationists, from pseudoscientific followers. He's not basing this on any sort of knowledge or experience about the methods and tools of science. Science does not have dogmas because science can't have dogmas. Science must continually challenge itself. That's why we have peer review. That's why we have experiments. That's why every time we come up with a new machine, we use it to look at something that we've looked at 1,000 times over, because if you're able to look at it with better resolution, or if you're able to look at it, you zoom in better, if you're able to pick up a different wavelength of light, if it's made more sensitive, you never know what you're going to find. You may think you understand something very, very well, and you take a look at it through a whole new lens, a brand new lens. You've never looked at it before, and all of a sudden, boom, here's something you didn't see. And a perfect example is Galileo Galilei. When he first looked up at the planets with his telescope, people have been looking at the planets for thousands of years at that point, tens of thousands of years. It's like, okay, look, they're planets. We see them every night. What's to look at? Well, when I looked at it through his telescope, Saturn has what he described them as ears. He didn't know what they were. Jupiter has satellites of its own. Venus goes through phases. He made all of these discoveries when he looked at the telescope through a brand new, when he looked at the planets through a brand new means, in his case, the telescope. So that is really the joy of science. And that is what this dogma bullshit completely ignores, is that scientists are not afraid to question themselves. They're not afraid to question each other. I mean, just think back. You only have to think back, I think 3 years ago now, when the Large Hadron Collider said, hey, we've detected neutrinos going faster than the speed of light. The entire scientific community said, no, you didn't, and here's why we know that. They didn't just say, fuck you, you're wrong. They said, this is why we know that can't be right. And the people at the Large Hadron Collider didn't throw their hands up and say, fuck you, you're trying to conceal all this and yada yada, and also the conspiracy theory bullshit. They said, actually, we found what the problem was. It was a loose cable, and you guys were right. And that's what science is, not this 10 dogma horseshit that Rupert Sheldrake is trying to sell you guys. So anyway, I'm Rupert Sheldrake. I just want to give you my view on things.